Hey everyone, welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Davide de Martis is an Italian photographer known for his portraiture of cars and people. He's a student of the visual arts through and through and a treat to spend time with. I tracked Davide down because when I was in Germany at the Leica event earlier this year, someone had driven there in a very fancy Lamborghini with Italian plates. I posted a picture to social media and was challenged by a listener to find the owner of the vehicle and ask them what the story was. It turned out that Davide had driven there because he shoots for the famous Italian car brand and had pitched the idea of driving to the event in a car and then writing about it for Rolling Stone. Pretty wild, eh? Well, once I'd tracked him down, it seemed like I should get him on the show. He obliged, and here we are. Some conversations with new guests are like a chat with an old friend, and this is most definitely one of those. I think I'd drop everything and sit down with Davide again over a coffee in a heartbeat. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Here's Davide.
As long as you can hear me properly, because I have no idea if... but I think this mic actually works pretty well.
It's really, really good. And actually, I will say, for listeners, like, your facial hair helps a lot because it keeps the mic placement exactly where it needs to be. So actually, I have to have an arm to keep my microphone. I do the King's Speech thing where you sort of test the distance to the mic to make sure it's right. But no, it's perfect.
Thank you so much for having me, and this is truly special for me. It's the first time that someone ever invited me to speak in a language which is not Italian, and do a podcast about photography. So I'm really excited about this. Thank you so much.
Well, I will say, and returning compliments in kind, like, thank you for coming on, obviously, but also it's my first time speaking to someone who got to drive a Lamborghini to a Leica event. So, it's one of those things. I'm intrigued about the career that got you to that point. I thought, like, what would be a fun jumping off point for this is when I was at the Leica event in June, that Lambo was parked outside and everyone was having their photo taken with it and they wanted, to pretend it was theirs and do whatever. Yeah. It was really cool. And I was joking with someone who'd been looking at the social stuff that I'd been posting. I was joking with them afterwards. Well, you have to find out who was driving the car. And so I kind of did, and I sort of went on a little, because everyone was posting such an insane amount of content off the back of that event. There were pictures and videos, and I was definitely schooled in creation of things and sharing of things. I think if aliens had arrived at the end after that event, they'd have thought that Wetzlar was the center of the universe. It was insane.
It was an amazing event,
wasn't it?
And it was yeah. I mean, to me, it was. I mean, as we wrote in the article that we did for Rolling Stone, me and Gabriele, we said it was like the Legoland of cameras, but it was for us. It was truly special. Well, for Gabriele, probably even more than me, just because it was something that it was celebrated. He was celebrated the way that he should have been celebrated as the great photographer that he is. And for me, tagging along and having this great idea of doing a road trip together, it was actually when you're going through all of this, you just I'm not the kind of guy that creates these sort of concepts about what's going to happen. I normally would just leave it through. Probably just this is because the way that I live my life with photography and in general that I live my life, that many times I've been through, down moments, and anytime that I was projecting, oh yes, I will do this and it will go great, and then it didn't. So when you grow up accustomed to disasters, then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna think for not even a second how it's going to go. I'm just gonna do it, and eventually we'll see how it goes. And while we were there experiencing all of this, we were like, okay, so this is happening. So I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self, one day you'll be standing in Wetzlar with a Leica camera around your neck, and you'll be like one of the photographers invited to this event. It's just up to now, still thinking and talking to you about it is like unbelievable. It's like, it's a dream come true, actually.
Yeah, I can't believe I was there as well. Like 800 people worldwide. It's absolutely crackers that they invited us. But you've touched on it there. That's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. So when you started and when you were making photos, or when you pick up a camera for the first time, did you always know that you wanted to be, whatever your work was, that you wanted it to be creative, that it always was going to be photography? Or, has that been kind of the goal all along, or was it something else?
Well, so I fell in love with photography and cameras when I was really young. So actually, a couple of weeks ago, my mom sent me a photograph. And behind this photograph, it was written that I took the portrait in 1984. So, and that would mean that I would have been 5 years old. So I was like, oh, okay. I always thought that I started to take photos when I was 8 years old, because I do have photographs of me holding the camera and of many photographs that I took of my sister. So my sister in this photograph she's 5 years younger than me. So you could clearly see more or less. There's no dates in the back of the prints, but yeah, it was like love at first sight. When I found out that my grandfather, he was the one, probably the most creative one, and his family, and probably his grandfather before him, and his brother. They used to take a lot of photographs with any kind of format camera that was available at the time. So we have an amazing archive of photographs of how do you call those? The very old, not slides, of course, but they are negative this big. From any kind of camera, like 6x6,
Right. Yeah, like medium
and
format.
all those. Yeah, but even the tiny ones, those formats that were in those foldable cameras, I actually, we call them vetrini, because they are some of them, they're like plates, like tiny plates. And we have so many of them. I've got photographs from the 1930s up to, I think up to the 60s, 70s, and then what happened was, I'll tell you, I'll go back to me finding about the camera and being fascinated by the instrument, just because it's right now, kids, they buy these fidget cubes and these sort of things that they are stress relievers, whatever. But at the time, to me, the camera was really something special. I just wanted to hold it, even though I had no idea what it did. So, I would just, I would just play with it. But what does it do? What's this? And then probably when my parents found out, they said, well, just go to the local photographers down the road and ask him if he can just tell you a few things and you can use it. And that's what I did. And he just said to me, use this film. There will be like 100 ASA. Just do 8 diaphragm 8 and shutter speed 125. Just point the camera at the sun and focus and shoot. And so that's how I started. And then there was a time where I found out if I twist those knobs, something else would happen. Like I could freeze speed. And one thing that I did at the time when I was like 10, 11 years old, I would take photos of the cars passing by my window, because to me, they were going fast, even though they weren't. And by doing like, a thousandth of a second, I would like freeze this image. That was probably my intention at the time. So that was probably the first time that I understood one of the magic powers of a camera. But then was really afterwards when I grew up, in between probably adolescence, going to through those years until probably I was like 15, 16. And then I was I want to learn way more about photography. Like, I'm doing it, but what is it? How it came to be? What's the story of photography? And I just start reading and looking through photographs in my home. And as I said, I had all these boxes of amazing photographs and then still have to see the light, actually. And this would be a project that I will do sooner or later, because it must be documented. It should be out there, because I have thousands and thousands of amazing images from my grandparents, from my dad family. But so I found out that growing up, I grew up basically in a kitchen in a restaurant, because my family had a restaurant. My father is, as long as I can remember, he's a sommelier, and he still is. And so we grew up around food and gathering around the table and having a glass of wine. Of course, I would play when I was a child to have some wine, but it was always around these magic moments. And when we started working more and more in the restaurant, there was not too much time to gatherings, birthdays, weekends, or whatever, because that kind of life is really, it is mesmerizing. It's a beautiful life, but the thing is that when something is that mesmerizing, it takes away time, so you have no idea that years are passing by. And when I was scrolling through these photo albums, actually, there was only one photo album of myself until my 4th birthday. And then there was another photo album just with 1, 2, 3 pages, and then no more photographs. And that thing really hurt me somehow. So I felt there was this void, like, oh, but where's my past? Like, I want to know more, because I don't have too many memories of it, and I wish there were photographs. So that thing was probably one of the first, let's say, the jump start into, okay, then I want to be the one that takes memories. I want to be the photographer. I want to be the one that will give, if people will allow me, give me a chance to take that moment in time, freeze it, and keep it in that box forever. And this stayed with me forever, basically. That probably was the first time that I really felt this very strong connection. And it's always been this kind of emotion to me, any time that I photograph, even though then I came to be a professional photographer that does advertising and car photography. But still, I think behind all of this, there's this deeper meaning, because it is my passion, and I still take everyday photographs, family photographs. And so I think it's that's the, how do you say, the spark that probably started it all, you see, and still keeps me going. And photography for me has always been therapy as well, and it never left me. There were times that I wanted to be a musician. I had my own band. I wrote songs, and I played drums, and we were actually pretty good. But I come from the island of Sardinia, where everything is so far away. Living in an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, an island that is so beautiful and so old, and we still are. If we call Italy the continent, to tell you how far we feel we are, and there are people that say Sardinia is not even Italy. But I don't know. I've never felt that way. But on certain things, the kind of people that we are, I feel that we are kind of different. It's like some probably Scottish people in Britain, like, just because you have this ancient tradition that comes along through your DNA, and we have this sort of ancient connection, and probably this is something that will always keep you rooted to the place where you were born, and somehow those values, they'll stay with you forever, like different values of friendship and family, and I think they are really linked and anchored somehow in my photography as well. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but
this is wonderful. This is exactly the kind of conversation I love to have on the show. It's got some real depth and colour and character. And you are absolutely right about places like Scotland the same. If you were to speak to people in Orkney, They feel like they sometimes relate. I was at university with a couple of folks from Orkney, and they would tell me that, like, depending on the day, they felt more a kinship with maybe like Norse traditions, because when, again, the place is ancient, it's windswept, they don't have many trees, like, just, you can learn to drive on the island, and they had no roundabouts, there was barely any traffic lights. Like, it's a completely different way of growing up. And then you know about the mainland in the modern world because you see it on TV, or you get it on the internet or whatever. But it is a completely different place to come from. And I love that you self-identified the gap for sort of keeping these memories. Similar thing, because we're helping my grandmother at the moment. She's 93, and we're helping clear out her house because she needs to go into care to help her at the moment. And we found a load of photos, and we found the kids' photos. So there's 3 grandchildren. There's me, I was first, and then there's my sister, and then there's my younger brother, who was a lot later. And what's funny is we found the photos literally in a row. So there's the stack of photos that was me, which was like every first grandchild, everything they do needs to be recorded and needs to be remembered.
Yes.
Second one comes along. Well, there's probably about 2/3 of the quantity of photos, because she was a girl as well, as a little bit different, and then by the time my poor brother comes along, it's wafer thin. It's just like he's walking, great, cool, we've done that.
Yes, so that's to say, my poor sister, she had basically, I'm not saying zero, but she has really little. But this thing that you just said is something that I always, when I do my workshop and I do some, like academy meetings, I always say that the power of photography, to me, I always try to describe it with this tiny anecdote. So not too long ago, like I think 5 to 6 years ago, I was back in my parents' home in Sardinia, and we were going through some photographs, and they found a new box that I've never seen before, and while I was going through, I found photos of myself and my grandmother that I've never seen of things that I absolutely have no recollection of it. And since I lost all of my grandparents very young, that means that my parents, they became orphan around the age of 30. This means that I lost basically all of them between me being 5 years old and probably 10. But there were, I guess, strong moments that I felt at the time. But then, you grow up. I'll be in less than 10 days, I'll be 46. And doing this job, you meet so many people, you make so many new memories. It's like my brain is like, oh, there's no time for defragmentation and try to fix anything, I just as Windows XP would do. So no time to save this memory. Here goes this new one. Forget about your grandma. But when I saw that photograph, I felt like this rush of blood coming through my head, a huge emotion, like this thing is coming back, like this strong memory is coming back. I'm like, oh, Jesus, I probably remember about this, but it was so emotional to see this moment again and like feel, oh, look how I was at the time. And sometimes I think we need to look back at those photographs to remember that we keep that child that we were everywhere we go. And for photographers especially, what we do is imprinted in those years. Why do we like this rather than that? Probably you will never know, but it's unconscious, and it's in the back of our head, and it's projecting through our eyes and through our camera. And I always tell I have this theory about, how this conscious and unconscious experience, they create the path towards your unique photography and your creativity. I think each and every one of us, I think we are the creation. What we do in photography, we are the creation of who we were as children and who we were as young adults, and we bring everything that we live with us. And this means for any photographer, I think, which means even if I shoot cars, even if I do portraits, the way I talk, the way that I approach people is, this construct of my past life since I was a child up to now. And that's what makes that moment between me and my subject unique. And it's my moment, I felt this way. And And I think we photographers, we belong in that moment with those people, even though we're taking the photos. But that's our moment. I think Meyerowitz says that the photo is outside the framing that we're doing. And I feel that when I hear him saying that, I was like, oh, yeah, I think that's we are agree with Maestro, and I think I've always thought about that. Like anything that I photograph that is not paid per se, like anything that I'm not doing as a professional photographer, which is my everyday photographs, I feel like, oh yeah, I would like to stand there, but now let me take the photograph now, and let me go back to that scene that I'm part of. And I think this what makes photography irreplaceable. There's nothing in the world that can change what photography has been and it is still now. And I feel the burden of being a photographer and try and leave. I'm not saying that I want to leave a mark, but I think that we have to leave a legacy behind. Like, it's always a piece of story. I'm not saying that I will be featured in books, but in the future, someone will open a box of photographs that I took, and they will find somehow, inspiration and say, "Oh, look, now he has gray hair, but he had this different kind of, I don't know, there's always something special."
I think the body of work we create is probably thinking about it in those terms. Like, there are no guarantees that your work will get seen by anyone or understood by anyone, or, I mean, look at people like Vivian Maier. Their work gets discovered a long time later. They may have never even really wanted it to have been public, or not necessarily not wanted it, but just not been bothered, right? They made the work for themselves. They made the work for the sake of the work. And I think as long as the future generations, the children, the grandchildren, the nephews, the cousins, whoever, that you're around, that are part of your family, as long as they can find those images, I do find, we had a limiting factor on our images because we came up using film. So whether it was Polaroids or 35mm or whatever, there was a limiting factor on the material you had access to. And I do feel sorry for the future generations who are going to have to wade through I don't know how many images I make a month, but if you include phone images of like receipts or whatever, it's thousands, clearly. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. And again, one of I always give this advice of printing photographs. I'm not saying that you have to do it all the time, but at least like once a year, special moments. I mean, we should go back to that. Like, even with the life with my wife, sometimes we look back at things. We sometimes an old photograph will pop up, and we're like, oh wait, how old we were here. Wow, it's been so long since we did this, or it's been so long since we last printed a photograph. So, I would normally do a batch of prints of anything. Actually, could be something personal, could be my work related to cars, or even anything else. But I will do, like, every few months I will print. And sometimes those prints, they even sit in boxes until I don't find the right framing, because I always like to find the right frame, and a good light box, and a very good anti-glare glass. But I think this should be part of the process, and I think many photographers agree with me on this. Just because lately I've I'm struggling in keeping what I do on social media. Like, I've been a fan of social media at the time. I think that art is, and has always been, resistance somehow. And at the time where social media came about, I was like, oh, this is a place for us. I thought that we could chat about. I miss talking to people a lot, like, just as we doing, because I think that the only way to grow up is through a very healthy conversation, but even a very healthy confrontation. So if I say, oh, to me, this is wrong, and you would say, but to me, this is right. And then I'll try to motivate why I think I'm right. And you do the same. Well, probably we necessarily will end up not agreeing, but yet we, unfolded this sort of conversation that I'm learning more about you. You're learning more about me. So this makes us closer somehow, and this knowledge that we have will give it to somebody else. And through social media, this thing at the big, I think this was the beginning, but then nowadays it's literally like watching advertising on television, and it's really hard. It's like, there was a time where I thought, God, this is looks like when you go to a grocery store and you know that you go to the cereal session, and you look at those cereal boxes, and over the years, they're so colorful. They offer these little gifts inside, and they have always something different. Yet the packaging is the same. It's like, the
Yeah.
mobile phone, and then you have all this different kind of display and a different height. So you know that if those products are the high side, so 1 meter 60, means that most probably these product paid more money to be on that shelf. It's like Google, when you Google and you
Yeah.
only see the first page, and it's like, okay, so I mean, is this truly what I need and what I want to see? And I don't think is there anymore. So
Yeah.
to me, I'm looking for a place to be inspired again. Thank God that I get my inspiration from music mainly, and from other visual art forms like, cinema,
Yeah.
paintings. And I've I love what my colleagues that I know personally do. Otherwise, in the past few years, like 5 to 6 years, I fell out of my research in photography. I used to study a lot of photography. I used to read a lot about photography. But that was then that I was like, oh, I want to stay in my path, because otherwise I get confused by other beautiful artists that I see, and I'm like, oh, let me see if I can do that part, but my way. And I was like, no, I want to be in my head.
Mm.
I want to be in total control, even though something will happen when maybe a colleague of mine will say, oh, I did that first. But I felt like there was a need to stay in my head, because at the end of the day, the grass on the other side will always be greener. But if you don't pay attention to it, and you focus on yours, even if from green turns to yellow, but that's fine. You know what I mean. Because it's your unique voice,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel.
I really like the idea of social media being like cereal. I think that's my. You're absolutely right. It's the classic marketing thing of the box shape is fundamentally not changing, but the thing in it
Yeah,
is now more whiz bang, and now it plays music, and now it's animated, and now it's all about
yeah,
video, and then it'll be something else, and they just it's long form, it's short form, it's bite size, it's expanded, it's just this constant movement, isn't it? Really, that's all it is. It's just
yeah.
the illusion of progress through movement.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people. I mean, young people that now they want to go back to like analog. I see with music. I still spin records, and I listen to CDs, and I still buy them,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a hi-fi stereo at my at home. But it's something that when I would talk about this with people for the past 10 years, the answer will always be the same. Well, there's whatever Spotify and any other music service that will do everything for you. But to me, the ritual of buying a vinyl record and then lose myself in the cover and then listen to the songs while I read the lyrics. That's how I did, and I always did. And most of my inspiration, even in photography, they came through those album covers. And we had a very beautiful conversation with Mathieu Bitton about this, which I absolutely love, because he said to me, that's how I started. I started browsing those records and looking at those photographs and saying, well, I wish one day I'll be able to be featured and do one of these covers. And, now he has 3 or 4 Grammy Awards. And so, yeah, I mean, it's to me, that kind of appreciation of any art form is way better than scrolling thousands of images in minutes on a mobile device. And I think, as I said, young people, they're going back to a slower kind of life. We have this community in Italy called Slow Food, where we try to enjoy this food that is made as close as possible from the restaurant, and very healthy is the way that it's been grown, if it's vegetables or whatever. So I always say that it's, I think there's a good way to live life and appreciate every bit of it, even our artistic life or life through photography. Even though what I do to earn my living sometimes is, or probably most of the times, is the total opposite of what I do in my, like, photography therapy, the way that I call it. So it's like completely a different story, like where everything is brush painted with light in a studio, and it's very complex.
You make space for that work, it sounds like, by having the other work be less compressed and then maybe more organic and more natural, perhaps. But as a subject, photographing lots of cars, maybe, or studio work and things like that, was it, you mentioned you studied photography, was it the kind of the technical aspect and the taming those things, was that attractive to you, that you wanted to really understand that stuff and learn it? Was that how you got into that?
Well, I've always been very interested in how to control light in general. So even if it was the main source, even if it was sunlight, I would always try to understand. Let me understand how light walks and go through glass and then bounces here. What does it, what does light do to this object? So I've always been really fascinated about that, and I started using flashlight in my first studio while I was studying photography, and I was trying to test different kind of light schemes. Just how you do it. How you would start with one flash, and then you would use two, and then I would try and see also, what if I put like 6? It would I be able to control it? And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I thought, like, well, now that I know these things, just let me remove one bit at a time. So let me go, minimal. So when I did that, I worked for like 10 years on this series of portraits where basically the light was really easy. It was just one single strobe light with a reflected umbrella. And I did all of these series of portraits that were basically the same, which was like a collection of like a figurine of like football players. And I had this thing of photographing. So the series were always linked by, the thing was the mask, like wearing a mask, like physically, or pretend to be somebody we are not through a portrait. And I did this for, oh God, like for 10 to 12 years. I did various personal solo exhibition on this. I did one project on Sardinian carnivals. I did one on cosplayers. I did one on these parties, like mass parties in like Renaissance, kind of Italian Renaissance outfits, and then I did, probably one of the most important and the longest that I did was this project that I called at the time Social Portraits, and I did this in like 2012, I think. So probably I started earlier than that, and then I did the exhibition on this project probably 2012 or 2013. I'll try to really shorten this thing, but So the project came to be when at the time social media like Facebook had people constantly changing their profile photograph. And I was like, gosh, why people are there into this, using these photographs? Like anytime that I would take a photo of one of my friends, they will say, oh, this is a great photo. I will use this as a profile photograph, even though they did not look that much as themselves. So the question was, well, wait, let me understand. So when I was like, I don't know, 18, 20 years old, there was no, I always took photographs. Okay. I would use, if I had no camera, there would be a disposable camera, but I always did. But I had no urge to turn the camera at myself and take a self portrait. I would never do that. And actually, when we used to go and take a photograph for our, driving license or passport or whatever, we always said, "Oh God, I don't look good here." And then, flash forward to 2012, there's already at the time this need of having this photo of ourselves and use it as this profile photograph. And I said to myself, what if I do a research to understand like how many people are into this? And I had this crazy idea of content, those, how do you call those kind of group? There was this website called Groupon where you can get like coupons for places like, and there's a name for it, for this kind of website, but whatever. So I did like this call to action on this website. And first of all, I went to a gallery and I talked with a publisher. I said, I'm going to do this. Would you be interested? And he said, oh yeah, do it. So I did this call to action. Of course, the website had to sell this thing that would be like a sort of fashion shoot. And then on the call to action, you will find something like, that Davide de Martis is this photographer that is trying to do a project about, and I quickly explained this stuff. So I photographed like 230 people, random people. And the most important thing was like, I need to photograph. That's why I did this call to action on the website, was like, I cannot do this with my friends because otherwise will be not a pool of people that could be, I don't know how to say, but original to try this experiment. So at the end of the day, I took this many portraits. They signed the copyright release in, I think, 150, 155. And what I did this photograph of them. They would come in the studio having like different outfits and they wanted to be like very different. So they would dress and try to look as somebody they were clearly not, just to be featured on the social media in a different way. So like it was like those 15 minutes of success through a photograph. Like I want to be a winner and these photographs will show it. And so I did this project and I had out like a questionnaire and I would ask them, how much would you pay for a professional shoot like this? Because it was like a very discounted price. And then, many questions like, why are you here? Why do you like photography? And then what would be, the use of this photograph? And they would say most of them, yeah, like a profile photograph on Facebook. So, that the experiment actually worked. And then I did an exhibition on this, and I know that I should put these things back on my website. I'm working on this, but so my career for a huge period of time was just about understanding people. It was just portraiture, pure portraiture, 35 millimeter, one single flash. And most of these years were done like I will hold the camera in my hand and the flash on the other hand. And that's how I would do it. But it was like, I want to understand more, just like, the series that I did on cosplayers. It was like more anthropologic and like a social thing, like why I want to know more, like why you're doing this, why you do it only in this kind of environment. And it was really interesting, but it was something that was, again, a process mainly for me to understand something. And then it would turn out in something that is for you to see. But anytime that I did this kind of projects, I never thought, oh yeah, I'm going to do this because then I'm going to do that and I'm going to sell this. And no, it was just like, I need to do this. Just like I think, reportage photographer feels that it's needed somewhere to document this and show it to the world. Of course, there's no comparison in this case, but I am no reportage photographer. I mean, I wish I did. I mean, that's why I started photography. Probably to be when you want to be a photographer and you start photography, you're like, oh yeah, I want to be James Natcher. I want to be, I want to be just like Robert Capa. You know what? That's what you want to do. But then, of course, thank goodness that you follow your own path.
Yeah.
And sorry for divergent for but the light then evolved into more than that. But actually, the funny thing is that car photography, as complex as I do it now, started just as blogging. Like I would take photos of cars parked or randomly passing by, just as I would do my personal photography without. And probably that was the main attraction to people that were in the car business, because they've never seen that kind of photograph, because everything was really polished and super contrasty, and everything was like so Jason Momoa would say rust and dirty. It would say, I love that kind of cars. So I wasn't looking for that. I was looking just for my kind of expression, but probably my kind of photography was that kind of photography in that kind of niche. And that probably what attracted people at the time. But nowadays, of course, everything changed, because there are like hundreds of photographers that they are doing what I used to do at the time. And there are these guys called car spotters that they just go around and they take a photo of the car, but it's just like you're hunting for Pokemon on the app. So it's just like, oh, I saw this car, and then they would just like take a awful photograph, like, but not an awful photograph, a snapshot, like a snapshot of the car. But then from there, I started growing up in terms of, well, let me just think about how I would like to photograph this car, and what is I think that is important about the car. Yeah, I've never been like a car head enthusiast. Like I don't know that much about cars, and probably this was again one of the reasons why I took photos of cars in a different way. I always loved design. And I always, anytime that I look at objects, I will try to, how do you say, inspect them. So this is like an old iPod, which I love and I still use, and I would just, if anytime I look at anything and I just twist it in my hand, and I'm like, oh, you see how the light reflects on this surface? Interesting. So what if I go to this side and highlight this part instead of that part? And that it started with that, and then I said, well, the sunlight is not enough, because I need more of this kind of light. So I wish there was like 4 hours of sunset, not like 1 hour of golden hour. So I was like, well, I will do it my way. So I just thank goodness that those LED lights came to be. Before, we had the big lights in the studio, but with the LED light, it was easier. They needed less power, and they got way powerful by the month, basically, like year after year. And so I could basically emulate that kind of light and try to recreate these sets. And then I would, bounce light through mirrors and try to, complicate things around. And then while I was complicating things around, I was like, oh, wait, but I actually like this arch light. I think is very interesting. And so I started to play around that in doing color blocking and that kind of things. But what I always said, that basically my car photography is like fundamental of photography applied to that. And of course, I know that it's not that easy, because I have colleagues that when they come with me and they try to take photos of cars, they fail. And I know that I don't know how to explain the way that I think that things anchor in my framing in a certain way, probably just because I really like the design. And I think looking at the texture of the paint, the different kind of paint and the way that the volume of the car sits in space and through lights, is the first source of inspiration. I would always walk around the subject and understand what is the best way to start photographing it. And
Yeah.
it always depends, which car it is and where it is. But the good thing is that year after year, my clients, they were, I was able to have this enormous creative freedom. So they would say to me, we have this new car and we would like to say this about the car. How would you, do it in photography? So I would pitch a few ideas. I would sketch a few photographs. I would say, my idea. So basically, it's like creative direction. It's a full creative direction. I will say, I did this because of that, and yeah, and basically that's how one of my big photograph comes to life. But I really love both sides. The complicated one and the easy one.
So what I really love about the way you've described that, quite often when you talk to creative people, they don't quite know how they arrived at what they arrived at. And so it takes someone who wasn't doing it to sort of see it. The way that you're describing, though, the iteration cycles that you went through of time spent with something, with a subject, and then coming away and thinking about it and then going back to that. So there's this kind of this expansion and contraction in terms of concentration and effort that you need, I think, the period of expansion after an intense period of creative work, whatever that creative work is, to then let the images sit in your head and think about it, and to be influenced by other things, to be influenced by other media around you, to pick up your iPod. It's funny, I have my iPod on my desk as well, which is nice.
Wow.
Yeah, they're delightful things to hold. I've been sitting here enjoying this. I also have my hi-fi next to me that the iPod plugs into, and it's just, it's really funny. But I think you need to create space to be bored is maybe the wrong thing, but for the images to live in your head for a bit and for the work to live in your head so that you can continue to progress in development. And that's where I think snapshots actually, and having your camera just around your neck all the time, that's sketchbook work, that's notes, that's but for people who make images, that's the equivalent of having a sketchbook and taking notes. And it's funny, Bill Brown, who was on last week as we were recording, talked about exactly that with Ginsberg, right? Like Ginsberg, once he had a camera, it was an extension of his notebook that he took photos that then became some of that thought process as well. And I think there's a real sort of maximal or min-maxing kind of thing in the world today where you must be journaling and it must be handwritten and it must be this and da. Sometimes I don't write in my journal for weeks or months at a time, but then I come back to it and then I stick things in it, and I have little printers so I can print pictures very quickly, like the little Sofor. I use that to print my images quite often and leave them as little trinkets around the house for the kids or for my wife or whatever. And these are all contributing to then when I sit down in front of a microphone. These are creative, this is food for my brain that enriches these conversations because you see that all these things are connected.
Yes. But I mean, it's like, it's the tiniest thing or the tiniest happening that happens daily that sometimes, they stay in your head, and while you're washing dishes or you're, having a shower, they again, oh yes, I saw that thing and that connects to that, and then we'll bring back something from this childhood memory or whatever, this imprinting that we have. As I was telling you, actually, I'm even drafted 5 or 6 chapters of a book that I'm trying to write about this kind of conscious and unconsciousness being effectively important if you are like a visual artist. And because many times I have this, it's a thesis, and but many times when I start asking myself, why do I do this? Or why am I taking portrait this way? What's I mean, I know how to use light. I could use like six flashes and work differently, but why am I doing this with a black background? And after many, many years, one day when I went back home, I found this photograph of my mom that is always been there in our house, and basically is a photo of a wedding, which is like a film flash in the place where they were having their wedding party. So basically, it's a black and white photograph, a beautiful film flash from the probably like left hand side or right hand side, and so a very nice contrast, a beautiful smile, and basically complete darkness in the back. And that images was like always printed in the back of my head, and it was like projecting through my eyes anytime that I would take that photograph. And it took ages for me to understand, but where this is coming from. Like, I love science fiction. Yes, I love this, I love that. But what am I like? Why I'm insisting this much? Yeah, so there are these things. Or like, my mom said to me once when I said to her, yeah, I've really no idea why I keep on, why I'm so comfortable like around cars. I just don't know. And then she said to me, well, probably because when you were in my belly, your dad was a car rally driver, and he would do like the special the rally like test to write these notes down. He would do it with me on the other side.
There
So
you go.
like probably this is another imprinting. So sometimes I challenge my colleagues in asking, I think you should dive deeper if you don't understand why you're doing that.
Mm.
And again, I think writing these things down and try to sort them first of all, for me to understand better where I come from and where am I going. I wish that these could eventually be helpful for other visual artists. And so I'm taking a bit of time to reflect on this and write. I have no idea if this thing will ever be able to become really a book or just a small notes or just a companion to something else. But I'm enjoying the process for sure.
Well, you should definitely indulge in the process, because I think it's good creative practice to kind of stretch your legs in a different way. And the more conversations like this that I have with artists, the more I'm convinced that being a creative person is not that different to being athletic, or like in all human endeavors, they're on a spectrum. And so if you enjoy creating some form of art, the chances are that you can turn your hand at least fairly competently to something else. And if that doesn't become a product, it will at least help you to understand, because you're likely to make photo books, and they're going to need some sort of context setting and things like that.
Yeah.
And just that process of having thought it through. I find you notice it with some of the older photographers that I've been able to talk to, like when I sat down with Joel Meyerowitz not that long ago, and he can say it just off the cuff, and it always sounds like poetry, but he spent his life talking about it. So the other one I love was Stan Lee of Spider-Man fame. Used to always be able to tell the story of Spider-Man, and I saw him so many times on TV and things talking about it. I met him once, and he would always tell the story the same way, where he'd say, "I've told this story so many times, it's probably true." was his kind of starting point. But he'd done it so many times, Yeah.
It's a repetition, as they say, the 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
But when you are through that, it's just, again, it's your movement and your way of interpreting what you're seeing through your camera. It's just, I know I don't even have, to think that much. I'm quite fast now at it. Like I don't feel, there was a time where I was insecure about it, and I will always be afraid, oh my God, how am I going to do it? But now, in the past few years, and this year to me has been, of course, very important. But in the past few years, I must say that I was like, oh, just completely just let yourself go and trust the process. And the more that I started doing that, it was like the more I was impressed.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, the scene in the Avengers film when they said to Hulk, "It's time to transform," and he said, "My secret that I'm always angry." He said
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but it's just that it's something that it's on. It's
Mm-hmm.
instant. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like now let me talk about it. Like I see it. I just see it. I see the light. I see how the things are placed, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this lens. I'm gonna use this camera, and that's how I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna do it in 5 minutes. And because most of the times when we're shooting, you know, commercials for these brands, you don't have that much time.
No.
Like, or if so, the worst is when you have like a very important person that you have to feature with a car, for example, like a whatever, like an artist, like an actor, like, and so it's like, you know, 3 minutes, but it could be even a managing director for one of these companies. So it's like you have to be really fast, and the only way to be fast is that you go through those 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Actually, I did like 10,000 hours for the car photography, 10,000 hours for the portrait photography,
Yeah.
and I think like way more than 10,000 hours of holding a camera and taking photos. Like I've been doing this for a lifetime now. It's so like embedded to me that like it's weird when I'm not using a camera, although I always have a camera in my pocket because that's the phone as well. So
Yeah.
if you ask me, have you taken any photographs today, I might say no, because maybe I didn't use a real camera. But did I take photographs? Yes, I
Yes.
did. every day
Yeah.
every day of my life is, you know, there was an interview a couple of years ago, I think, yes, 2 years ago, when I said, by telling the story of how I used to photograph, it was like it was an obsession. If I did not photograph, it didn't exist.
Mm.
And I think that probably in at a certain degree, it still probably is. It's like I cannot, if there's that light on that object, I gotta take a photograph.
Yeah. So, funny thing, friends of mine years ago for a birthday, they went through my social media. They went through Twitter, they went through Flickr, they went through all sorts of stuff, and they made a little book for me of my
Oh,
photos. It was
nice.
called "Pics or It Didn't Happen." Was the title of the book, because I used to joke that used to be a thing I would say to them. And they made it was my friend Mel. They pulled together a load of photos and text, and they arranged photos and text. So it was my social media. It was mostly tweets at the time, which ages it. So it was tweets and photos from Flickr and Twitter and things like that. And it was lovely to see what someone else had taken from the things I was putting out into the world, even in just a silly way. So yeah, Pixar, it didn't happen. But your mentioning of speed is also a nice jumping off for something I wanted to ask you about, which was what
Yeah.
you tend to use to shoot. Are you an SL full big system
Yeah.
person? Are you a rangefinder person? Like, what's your go-to for someone calls you up and says you've
Okay.
got 10 minutes with the CEO of Lamborghini? Let's go.
Well, yes. So to me, it's always like that. I will, you know, cook my recipe
Mhm.
for every kind of dish. You know, I grew up in a restaurant, so I always do these culinary kind of metaphors.
Love it.
But I think that is always spot on. Like, so if the final dish that I'm cooking is the photograph of a CEO standing in front of a car, I don't know, then I will know that I need to be really fast. I don't have that much time to, you know, joke around and then find out what am I going to use. So I will probably use like a prime lens that could be like a 50, because I want to like I do have the 50 Summilux for DSL. Although I don't love the 50 millimeter, it's not at all my favorite lens,
Oh,
but that lens is a special lens. So any special lens that can give me character, then it's, you know, as Gajan would say, is a paintbrush. So, and that's, I totally agree with him. So I need to be in a shortest period of time, I need to create something impactful that to the eye of somebody that is not used to see that many photographs will say, oh, this looks different. So I would use that kind of lens. And and then I would use the SL in that case, and I would spend most of the times just go searching for the right angle. Always, I will always do that, and I will just say, while I'm doing that, I will talk to my subject. That is the most important thing. I will see where I need to place myself in super humble, medium humble, normal, or hectic. So I need to see if I minus or plus, which means you need to attune, with with your subject. If your subject is very exuberant, then I will lay very low, very subtle. I will talk in a different way. I will always tell I will introduce myself and I will say, I will not hold the camera. That's the last thing that I will do. So I will talk and say, I introduce myself, say, we will do this. My idea is I will use this lens because this and that. I will shoot from this high side. I think is a good thing, and then I will move further here. I will explain. I will say, and this will take me approximately like 5 minutes, and it will say, oh, okay, good. And then my assistant will be there, and eventually I would need maybe a small feel of flesh if it's needed, and then I will start this conversation. Again, to me it's like this phrasing as a conversation. I want to reach the personal, and if I can, even the intimate sphere of this subject. And yeah, in that case I would use that combo. But if I have more time, then I would use a rangefinder, just because I can take it easy. I can enjoy this process more. I don't need to I don't need to perform this much before the act of taking a photograph. When I use in a M, means that it's okay. It's a friendly environment. Let's say there's no like super high performance. When I sometimes it happens that it's like, okay, we have 2 minutes to photograph, I don't know, Hiroshi Fujiwara, or this actor, David Beckham. Well, some of them, they're true gentlemen, like David Beckham. I photographed him many times, and he was always so nice. And I always trusted what I was doing. And by the third time that I took photos of him, it was like, you don't need to tell me anything. Just do your thing. I trust you. But I think you always need to build that. And I mean, that's of course, my opinion. But it suits my need, it fits me. That's I grew up. But then when I photograph cars, for example, and I don't have that much time, but if I want to really be like surgical with a series of photos that I need to take, even though I don't like that kind of lens, which means a zoom lens. When I bought the SL almost 10 years ago, there's only one lens that you could buy, the 24-90. And the 50. That's just those was were the two lenses. So at the beginning I was like, I don't really like zoom lens. I don't know what to do. And then of course I got that lens, and I was like, oh, okay, this actually might work,
Actually
because
quite good.
it's impressive. And so I would do that. I would use that lens. I can do 90 mil on details. And it's amazing. And then I step backwards, and then I can do this sort of again, I would say, just as musicians do, like they improvise, like a jazz band would improvise. So I would do this phrasing between me and the car, and between wide angle and telelens, which means I create this sort of rhythm. Sometimes a car needs a bit of wide angle, and sometimes does not. Sometimes a car needs to be shoot like lower, sometimes higher. So it's something always about design. So you want to emphasize the emphasize that part of the car, or you want to hide it. It's just like in portraiture. So do I want to unveil who's behind this face, or I want to play with him and I want to emphasize more who is trying to be in the photographs. That kind of thing. Because so the main difference is when you take a portrait of a car and you take a portrait of a human being. As I said, always this. I talked about this with Gajan as well. Is that if I'm taking a portrait, it's a direct conversation and you react to me doing things, which means if I want to make you laugh, I'll try to make you laugh somehow, and you maybe will or not laugh, but you will do something, and that could be a good portrait. Or if I want to, if I want you to be more serious, then I will try. So it's like a a communication that is instant. I would do a thing, you react, but I can stay right in front of you at high side, and I would just do things. But when you shoot a car, there's no way you're going to stay there. So let's say you want the car to smile, then you would like to go lower and maybe use a wide angle and you see her smile. You know what I mean? And that, and so it's you walk around this subject and you try, you want to make it like menacing and angry, or maybe you go lower and then you use more of a telephoto lens, and so that's how you play around it. But I think that, again, everything is based on this fundamental photography, as I say, just applied, to this kind of subjects. So, but then we go to my everyday photography. That will be my forever go-to lens. It will be the 35 millimeter forever. I've I grew up with that lens. Yes,
Same.
a beautiful combo.
Yeah.
But there was a beautiful documentary I remember that I've seen probably 15 to 20 years ago, and I think it's called War Photographer, and it featured James Natry. I don't know if you've ever watched it, and it's one of the most beautiful thing is that at the time there were no GoPros at the time, so he put like this a camcorder on top of his camera while he was shooting, and when I saw that, I felt like, oh, he's basically like doing what I do somehow. Like he's focusing and recomposing, and he shoots a lot, but I can see myself like doing that, and I was like, but what lens is he using? And I saw he was using a 35, and I was like, oh yes. Because before that, I had probably a zoom lens, and I had a 50 mil, 135 mil, and a wide angle. And I always thought like, I would like to be in between, just because I know the 50 millimeters starts like to get this. I don't know, it's weird. I don't like it that much. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh yes, this is the lens. I need to use this. And yeah, I think I've been using that lens for probably 10 years straight to do anything. I would do portraiture, I would do product, I would do fashion, I would do anything. My own photography, I would do anything with that lens, just because it's like the Swiss Army knife of lenses. It's that kind of it does everything, and I think it's important, to understand for any upcoming photographer out there that you just stick to one lens and one camera and just do everything with that, because that's the best gym that you can do. Yeah. I can't remember who always said that your legs are your zoom.
Yeah, but they're right. And I do the same thing. This regular listeners know, and you probably know from listening, that the 35 on my M is my go-to. Like that's what's always on the camera. And I will swap around, because that's the benefit. Why have an interchangeable lens system if you don't change them occasionally?
Of course, yes.
And mine's only goes down to 2.8, so it's not super wide. But again, you can do so much with it, and yeah, I love that combination. Yeah. And I feel like that's the way I see the world, in the same way that nobody looks at someone who paints with watercolors and goes, "Oh, have you not tried acrylic? Acrylic's great." Or or spray cans. Like, it's okay to choose something, and for that to be your look.
Oh yes, I think that in this time and age that we're living, we are overstimulated by anybody trying to sell you things.
Yes,
including my colleagues that I enjoy so much. So there are so many YouTube channels that I enjoy very much, and because I'm a tech, how do you say, a nerd, and
Yeah.
I love to watch all of those. But at the end of the day, it seems like there's always something new that they want you to try,
Yeah.
and and I agree. But I would say that if you go back in time before this, we didn't have this, big super source of information that could change our minds, every now and then. So again, the suggestion is try to find the right one, the one that suits your needs, and use that. It's hard. I think it's very hard for the people that are, very much younger than us, like 20 years younger than us. They grew up with this, and I think in their brain there's a bit of confusion. So I would suggest, just as Tarantino says, watch old movies and listen to new music. I think the best is like go back to old photography, like watch and learn the history of photography, learn the fundamentals, by the greatest, and learn and find out that there was a time where a photographer was a photographer of everything, of landscape, of wedding. It was a street photographer. It was a car photographer. It was everything. And if you use that as a fundamental to then become the photographer of today, I think you are on the right path, because I've never been a fan of this categorization of photographers. I think you can definitely specialize or something. You can feel more relaxed in doing certain kind of photography just because it's the person that you are. But as a technician of the instrument, I think that you can point the camera whatever, and you can still, take great photos. But yeah, I think that that's needed. I have a beautiful book that is called probably Car Photo or Photocar. There was a huge exhibition that they did in France, and it collects amazing photographs of cars by amazing photographers. They don't shoot cars. But if you go and look through even John Meyerowith's portfolio, there are amazing car photographs. If you go through Elliot Erwitt, you will find amazing car photos. I mean, this is just to say that, again, I applied these fundamentals and I got into this niche where people like what I do. But I think I'm fortunate that these people that follow me and know my work on social media, and not only, and they, even my clients, that they gave me a chance, yes, they see something special. But I don't think there's no trick. It's just, again, my background applied to what I see. I've never been, not even for a moment, afraid of the AI thing. I never did. It's a conversation that anytime that someone, I do a bit of like a talk or interview or whatever, they always pose this question. And I'm like, I always cut it short by saying, no, I'm not worried. And so
Yeah.
they just keep me asking, well, and we always say, and I'm not the only one who will say, well, photography means writing with light.
Yeah.
So if there's no light and you're not using a camera to collect the light the way that you like it, what are we talking about? That's we're talking about cartoons, we're talking about animation, but it's not photography.
No, it's not. And I saw the stuff this week that saw. I mean, I hate it. It's awful. It's slop, and it's not interesting or good. And I don't really know. I can see why the underlying technology is useful to someone who, if it speeds up someone's workflow in doing something, if it makes
Yeah.
if it makes removing things that are in shot that you don't want, or cleaning up old, great, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Why on earth Justine would agree to be the face of this thing and make an avatar of herself having a meltdown at an airport or throwing a cake around and being arrested, or it's like we've developed a tool that can do so many things, and then the first thing we're doing to show it off is saying you record a video of yourself reading some numbers out, and then from that point on, you can create a photorealistic version of yourself, and you can make that video do anything. And it's garbage. It's just all, and it's like, well,
I just,
why? Like,
it's nothing that I, would live for. And
yeah,
again, I think the uniqueness of each and every photographer that I've met is that until the point that I've met them, they live that life. And they are, again, that recipe, that unique mix of, spice and that kind of ingredient that comes only in their DNA.
yeah,
And it's only them. You cannot clone them. You can understand, who they are and where they come from, and you can try to emulate them. And actually, I think that you should as an exercise. But while you do, travel, discover the world, learn new languages, get into not saying a fight, but get into a very heated argument
yeah,
with someone in a pub in Wales, and I understand the hard way of things that if you live in your own country, and even though you read it through books, when you experience it firsthand, then you understand it. It's the only way to grow up is to try and fail and do it again. I think in anything, and there's no need to rush anything. I started studying photography for real, like going to school of photography when I was 28. And up to when I finished the school, I wanted to go to university, but my family could not afford it. So I started to work. And I did so many jobs until I was able to pay for the school and start. While I was working, I would do the photography school. I'm glad that I did that, because when I became a photographer, thank God that I was already able to write emails. But you need still a lot of time to understand how, to quote your work when you're starting, for sure, because I'm taking photographs and now people want to pay me for this. But how much am I worth it?
yeah,
Then this new world opens up and like, oh God, copyright. So how do we deal with this? And like,
yeah,
so it's, but until you reach that time, you can still take photographs and travel the world and grow up as an individual and have a story to tell. If you don't do that and you start taking photos, then what are you bringing to
yeah,
the table? And I know that it might sound kind of generalistic somehow, because someone would say, well, but it's just photograph, it's just a portrait, it's just, well, yes, but when you try and bring to that moment, the performative aspect of photography. I'm not, saying blow up Antonioni, that kind of give me this, give me that, that kind of exaggeration of fashion,
yeah,
photographers. I'm not a talker, by the way. I would introduce myself and I would say what I would do, but I will never do this, more this, more that. No, it's just, but I think that it means a lot. I think it means a lot what you bring. Any moment where your photography skills need to interact with your personal skills in dealing with the social moment, that kind of thing. But it's because I think it's very important that all the energy that is around the moment that you're taking a photograph needs to be with you, the positive energy that needs to be
yeah.
with you. And, because that, that, the definitive moment, how we would, now I'm losing the
The
reference.
decisive moment.
Yeah.
Yes,
Who was it?
that was Bresson.
Yes. Okay. Yes, it was Bresson. So I think that, of course, you can, set up a sort of trap.
Yeah,
You stay there. The light is perfect, and somebody will, pass with a beautiful scarf blowing in the wind, and that could happen for sure. But if I think you have also to believe in the moment where, okay, I think this is the right time that I will spend some time here. But I'm sure that if I ask some of my colleagues that they really do that, and I think they feel when something is about time. It's just how you feel that the light is about to change and turn
yeah,
very weird.
yeah,
It's those moments right after the thunderstorm or right before a thunderstorm. There's something like the sky turns like this weird yellow, and you're like, oh God, it's like those apocalyptic kind of vibe. But you can feel it when you are out there and you're living those moments. You're like, oh, it might happen now. And if you're really lucky, then you can take that amazing photograph. Yeah. Well, and then there's another photographer like F8 and Be There.
Yeah, the F8 and Be There, I think, came originally from a New York photographer called Ouija. Did news reporting stuff at night, right? And would just turn up with a flash, and it was just like you just F8 and Be There. I'm very much in the F8 phase of my life right now, which is just.
Oh, really?
Well, because I'm doing a sky.
And zone focusing?
A lot of it, yeah. And I'm doing, but it's because, again, my only camera is an M and I'm shooting everything in my life. So sometimes it's the boys running around. Sometimes it's the stuff that I'm doing for a project where I'm collecting images of sky because I want to make a body of work about the sky. So, oftentimes it's bright relative to what's around. Even when it's dark, it's bright. So that's where you just like I'm focused. I was driving home yesterday. What you were saying about the rain, it had been raining and it had stopped, and the mountains and hills where we live in the background just looked incredible. And so I pulled over by the side of the road, and the boys were like in the back of the car going, "Yes, Dad, you should get these." And I hopped out the car, and again, I'm focused. I'm set to infinity. I'm set to f8. I've got, I'm already set up.
Yeah.
So then I can just hop out and compose and just worry about what's in the frame rather than anything else. And that speed is freedom.
Oh, it absolutely is. Like with the rangefinder, there's no in between. There's no focus in time. There's no like going back and forth of the lens trying to focus. It's just is the fastest camera. Yeah. But of course you need to operate the camera. But yeah, I mean, but I think that I'm even when I shoot cars. When I did this project in 2020, it was a project that is very important to me. I did this project for Lamborghini. It was called With Italy for Italy. That was like a way of the company to do an homage to photography and to Italy during the period of COVID. They put together like 22, 23 photographers, and each and every photographer was like let's call like a distinguished photographer in his niche. And I was called to take photos of vintage cars. But I was lucky enough that the vintage car was a Lamborghini Miura, which is probably one of my favorite cars of all time, in a stunning gold yellow finish. Wow. And it's truly look like gold. And the plate was at the city of Cagliari, so from Sardinia. And every photographer was assigned a car and a region. And I was assigned my island, so my region with that car. So it was already, the recipe was, all the ingredients were there, but the thing was like, okay, now I need to find the right spots. So I was like, I need this. So this is the color. And I knew it was like July, June. I said, I need, those slightly burned cornfields or a blue sky, not too blue. So around that time of the day in this place. So I knew the recipe, but then there's a huge question mark. Like, would this be possible? And I was really lucky because the weather was there, and I studied for a month all the locations. So I knew that, okay, if we bring the car at this time of the day in this location, the sun will create this shadow here, will be this kind of tone. So everything was like prepared. But of course, if it was cloudy, done. It could not happen, and it did. So and I think I took in that series. There are still some of my favorite photographs that I ever taken of cars. Even because there's this like this value, like emotional value. That's how you say it. And for once, I was able not to kill my babies, as you say. They when you take photos that they're too emotional for you, but they're not. They're not going to make the series. But in that case, I was really lucky that all of them that were just as I wanted them. And actually, that project was probably the turning point in being like featured. Like, okay, is a good one.
Yeah.
Like he from now on we would like to work with him. And it was just not only them and many other car companies, they start giving me a chance. And
He's ready now.
and that was well, and I was featured in a book as well, so with that project. So it was a beautiful moment for me.
Oh, amazing. Great. Well, that I think is maybe a nice point to end on. That's really what a wonderful story. And next time we speak, I will talk to you about Ducatis, because I'm a motorcycle person, not a car person.
Well, I'm a motorcycle person too, so we will have that conversation another time. Ian, it's been a true pleasure and an honor being your guest, and I really enjoyed every moment. I hope it was good. I was in a trance throughout the thing, but I hope your listeners will enjoy it.
I'm sure they will. That is the magic of these conversations, is that they are conversations, right? They're not like when did you go here? What did you do? So it was magic. It was great. Thank you, mate.
Thank you again.
Right.
Have a great day.
Take care, man. See you soon.
See you. Bye.
A big thank you once again to Davide for being on the show. I love that chat. It was so good. And who knew that a beard would be so good for microphone placement? There you go. Learn something every day. If you enjoyed that episode and you're new, don't forget you can like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, all those fine places. And also, if you feel so inclined, please do leave a review and share it with a friend, because that will help the show to grow and to be found by other people. There is also a weekly newsletter you can sign up to. That's available at primelensespodcast.com/sign-up. There's a link to that in the show notes. And lastly, if you really, really want to go the extra mile, the show also has a Patreon that you can support us at. Find out more on primelensespodcast.com. Right, well, I think that'll do. I might go away and dream of photographing Lamborghinis for a little while against beautiful summer fields. That's such a cool thing. Honestly, Davide's images, go and have a look. They're remarkable. Really, really cool. He makes those cars look incredible. And you can buy prints. There you go. See, I'm selling for other people. I'm not just selling for me. Right, that'll do. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you next time.